Hey there, Icarus and RXM enthusiasts. Dan here with Icarus Precision, and in this video, we're going to go over how to disassemble your Ruger RXM and install one of our Icarus Precision RXM aluminum grip modules. Let's hit it. The process for changing out the grip module isn't necessarily very difficult, but it can be confusing if you've never done it before. There are two main things we need to accomplish: changing out the fire control insert, or FCI, and installing a magazine release. Now, before we continue, just to remind you, the Icarus module is designed to use a Glock Gen 4 magazine release. This means that the mag release that comes with the Ruger RXM will not be compatible. Now, we did this because we found that the Gen 3 release is a little on the smaller side, and we wanted to provide a more robust, recent, and reversible version of the mag release. That being said, some tools that may help you to complete this job are a punch set and armorer's block, a small flathead screwdriver, and I personally find a pair of needle nose pliers to be useful, but that's because I have big fingers. Without further ado, let's jump into this and start with the most important step, which is checking to make sure that the firearm is clear and safe. So we'll drop any magazines and fully cycle the slide, visually checking to ensure that the chamber is empty. All right, nothing in there. The Ruger RXM field strips just like a Glock, so we'll need to slightly bring the slide to the rear, hold down the slide lock on both sides, release the slide, pull the trigger, and the slide should then be able to be removed from the front. The technique that I like to use is to take my dominant hand, wrap my thumb underneath the beaver tail, and my other fingers over the rear of the slide, and use the iron sights or red dot to pull the slide back. It doesn't have to come very far. Then I take my non-dominant hand and pinch and pull on the slide lock lever from underneath the muzzle. With pressure on both of those, I release the slide lock, pull the trigger, and the slide comes right off the front. Unless you're adding any other upgrades or components to the slide or springs or barrels or anything, we don't need to break down the slide any further and can set that to the side. Next, there are two pins that we'll need to remove with a punch. We can just place the gun on the armorer's block and gently tap out these two pins. Now, the forward pin is designed so that it can only be removed out the left side of the gun. So we're going to put this on our block. Tapping all the way through. All right, and then our second pin. Now, on this right side, it's not exactly a flush, flat pin, so be careful that you don't mar up your finish or anything. All the way through as well. And we're able to pull it out. And we're going to set that to the side. So now we have our two pins removed, but we still have to take out the slide lock. So we do this by taking the punch or screwdriver, and there's a little leaf spring in here that you need to push down. And then once the tension is off from underneath the slide lock, it can be pulled out or turn it and let gravity fall out from either side. Just be careful not to let that spring pop back. Push down and out. Pulled right out. And again, we're going to set this off to the side. And then once that's out, you might be able to just turn it upside down. Yep. A little bit of gravity and the leaf spring for the takedown lock, the slide lock, will pop right out. And again, we need to save that as well. Now we'll just need to lift up and out on the FCI, and our Ruger should be disassembled. I find sometimes it's a little easier. These can get a little bit tight, even on the polymer modules, to just kind of pry gently, lightly up from the module. There we go. Pull up and out. And now our RXM is disassembled to the point that we need for installation of the Icarus module. Again, the mag release we're not using, so I'm going to set this off to the side. For installation, it may be easier to install the magazine release before installing the FCI, though it's not 100% needed. You can either install the mag release into the module first and then the spring, or spring then mag release. But the key here is that the spring needs to be on the inside of the mag release. So if you install the spring first, you'll need something to pry that spring forward to be able to get the mag release past it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the mag release in first. And then again, this is another area where I like to use those needle nose pliers, because there's a small hole down in the module, and this needle nose plier really lets me get control to be able to get down in there. Go ahead. And then once it's in that hole, make sure that it is fully seated. So once the magazine is fully seated and the spring is fully seated down in that hole, we need to take something like a small screwdriver, and you need to push that spring over, and there's a groove on the mag release that spring needs to slide into. And give it a little test, and the mag release is working. So now that we have the mag release installed, we can begin inserting our FCI by placing the trigger through the trigger opening and sliding the rear of the FCI into the beaver tail of the module. So we're gonna put this trigger in, and then this module goes underneath, and it should go underneath the back of that beaver tail area. Make sure it's fully seated into the rear, and then all we need to do is push down on the front, and our takedown pin holes should all be aligned. We can then go and gently tap our pins back into place. Remember that the front pin needs to be inserted from the left side and the tab oriented to the right, so that when you're looking inside of the module, the curve of the pin makes a U. And when you're doing this, also make sure that you're keeping these things aligned, especially this middle or rear takedown pin, as it isn't fully enclosed. So if you don't pay attention, it can get off skew a little bit. Just like that. All the way through. Gonna make it a little more even. All right. And that first takedown pin is about even through. We're gonna take our second pin, start this one. So again, making sure that this tab is to the right, lining it up on the hole. Take my nylon side, give it a little love tap, go to the other side, and then it's lined up in that rectangular groove, and our pin is making a U in that dust cover area. Next, we'll need to insert the slide lock leaf spring into the slot opening in the bottom of the module. This is another place where I find the needle nose pliers to be helpful. So I pinch from the back in that little groove, make sure it sits in the middle, and that is in. Once the spring is seated, the bottom of the slide lock has a little groove in it. So we need to make sure that when we put that in, that groove is towards the bottom. So we're going to take either our screwdriver or our punch, and we're going to push down on that spring. Now be careful when you push down on the spring that you don't actually slide off the end, because you will launch this thing into a new dimension faster than a rocket ship, and you'll spend quite a bit of time potentially looking for it, because I may or may not have done that. So when you're pushing this down, just make sure that you're not sliding off the end. I'm going to push this down, get the slide lock over the spring, through, and then right there, right in the center, you can hear that little click. So now the slide lock is in, and it's caught in kind of that spring detent. Now we're ready to put our slide back on. So we take our slide, line up the grooves on the back with the FCI, pull it back all the way till we hear the click and the trigger reset. So now we know that it's back on. Lastly, all we need to do is function check. As usual, snap caps are helpful, but not entirely necessary. We'll start with the safeties. So we're going to try to actuate the trigger without pressing that middle safety button, and it should not fire. And that's the only external safety on the Ruger RXM. So now we'll take the magazine, We'll insert it, make sure it fully seats and locks, and it is doing so. We are now going to cycle the slide and make sure that a round has chambered. So now it's feeding correctly. Now we'll pull the trigger and maintain that pressure to the rear and cycle the slide again. So now we have a new round in the chamber. That round has successfully ejected, and we've got our trigger to the rear, so it should have reset. We'll listen for that audible click, and the trigger has reset. So we're going to do this through all the snap caps that we have, and after the last snap cap pops out, the slide should lock to the rear. And the slide did lock to the rear. Lastly, we just press the mag release. Make sure that that magazine falls out freely. If all that worked, you're good to head to the range. If not, you'll need to go back, reinstall the FCI, and troubleshoot where you might have gone wrong, or take the gun to a certified professional gunsmith. And there we have it, how to install the Icarus Precision grip module for the Ruger RXM. If you have any questions about these modules or any of our other products, please feel free to reach out to info@icarusprecision.com. Make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons so you can get notified when future videos are released. Also, be sure to check out our other social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram. And if you're looking for insider information on when restocks and product drops are happening, go ahead and sign up to subscribe through the link at the top of our website or at the link in the description below. Now, what will you build to make sure that the deck is stacked?